My name is Molly Wheeler, Policy Director. What that means for you is that I do the research and I'm the person who's always showing up in your inbox asking you for data. I'm the annoying one. It's my goal at the League to ensure that our research is both interesting and useful. I come from higher ed, where we have the privilege of really only needing our research to be interesting, and even that is pretty debatable at times. So when ULCT pursues a research project, it needs to be interesting, it needs to be useful, and our findings need to help us drive impactful policy. And as you knew before you arrived, we have a lot, and has hopefully been solidified through this conference, we have a lot of tough policy challenges and a lot of big negotiations ahead of us. So how do we position ourselves for success? W. Edward Deming said, "In God we trust, all others bring data." I'm a big believer in this quote. First, we as the League need to clearly demonstrate that we understand the policy landscape to establish our credibility, and we need data to do that. Second, good policy is driven by good data. And if we have bad data or no data at all, another saying I like is garbage in, garbage out. And I think we'd all like to avoid that outcome. And while data is necessary, I also don't believe that it is sufficient, because while we are a lot of nerds who work with data and spreadsheets, we're also a lot of nerds who work with people. And people don't just remember the data point, they remember the story. And so we need you to help us be able to do both. We need to be able to present solid, data-driven research with compelling narratives. And you help us a lot with this. This year, you've helped us research water and land use and tax policy, just to name a few. And we need you to keep helping us do that. Keep telling us your stories, keep giving us your data, because that is how we can affect better policy for the state. One particular policy we're working on right now is public safety. We know that cities and towns have struggled to both recruit and retain their public safety employees. Over the past year, ULCT has researched the scope and cause of these challenges. But this year, we had the opportunity to collaborate with the Utah Foundation to dig a little deeper into this and try to find some impactful solutions. The final report isn't quite ready yet, but we still felt it was really important to have senior analyst with Utah Foundation, Christopher Collard, come talk about what we found so far and what the plan is ahead. So with that, I will turn the time over to Christopher.
As someone who uses the data that Molly collects, I also want to thank you for your participation in helping us have good data as we kind of research these important topics that affect a lot of Utah cities. So I mean, public safety right now is a topic across the nation, really. Looking here in Utah, you know, we have a very low unemployment rate. We have one of the lowest in the country. But I mean, it's low even by Utah standards. Over the past 10 years, we've had kind of below our long-term average of unemployment. But then even like in the past 6 years, we've been below that 10-year average. So like this is quite possibly one of the tightest markets we've had in Utah in the past 50 years. So I mean, this is hiring not only police officers, but almost anybody. This is a challenge that everyone in the market is facing right now. And you know, I'm an economist by background. The economist answer to like hiring more people and retaining them is just pay them more. But for cities, that's a difficult conversation for cities, because they're not, you know, cities aren't businesses. They can't just, you know, maybe fund that through increasing the prices of their product. Cities have to be responsible with their citizens' funds. They have to, you know, in order to raise taxes, they have to go out and talk with their citizens, kind of go through the process of the truth in taxation process to raise property taxes. And these are difficult conversations to have. Because, you know, citizens are facing their own problems. You know, we're in we've seen the highest inflation for a long time, and people are feeling that. So it definitely puts cities in kind of this tight spot where they can't find enough funds to pay more for police officers, and it's also difficult at the same time to go ask citizens to contribute more to cover those services. So it's definitely a very tricky spot. But pay is definitely an important part of the equation, and when the League of Cities and Towns, they did an amazing survey of police officers. They got over 2,000 responses from police officers, which for me is wonderful. My good survey is only like 800 people. So this is really something that's really solid. And kind of what came back is they were asked, what can your department and city do to keep you around? And the number one answer was pay me more. When asked, looking at those who are considering taking other jobs, going to the private sector, they're asking, well, why are you considering the private sector? The number one answer was they pay more. So pay is definitely a big part of the conversation. And in the recent, past year or so, we've seen public safety officers have gotten some serious pay wages, especially here and kind of in the metropolitan area of Salt Lake County and the surrounding counties. And so one question we have is are these pay increases enough? And that's one thing that we haven't quite done yet. We're in the middle of reaching out again to police officers. We're going to be following up on this. Have your recent pay increases, have they had an impact on your desire to stay stay working in public service as a public safety officer? So we're going to be excited to get those results in and see if these recent pay increases, what the impact they've had. Also, so realizing that while at the same time, pay is this factor that comes up over and over again. It kind of, as we ask these questions about how do we recruit, how do we retain more, we realize that again, this is a difficult position for many cities. So we're also doing a lot of research into other methods that don't quite have exactly the same impact on city budgets. What can cities do if they don't have additional funding to put towards police? Or how can they more efficiently offer these services? Or what are some other methods they could do? And one thing that came up, it wasn't exactly related to retention, but when we asked people, in this survey, when the League of Cities and Towns asked if police officers were really satisfied with their job, there was a kind of a wide diversity of range on whether police officers were satisfied or not. But then we asked them to explain why they were satisfied or unsatisfied with their position, and the most common response was actually their boss, or kind of administrative policies. And so about half, this was kind of an open response. They could say anything they wanted, and half of them mentioned either a boss, either their boss was great, they felt supported by their chief, they really knew what was going on and supported the officers, or we also had a lot of the opposite. Our chief doesn't support us, he doesn't know what's going on, or just our administrative policies make my job a terrible place to be. So if we look at what good management, I guess, so and this kind of relates to the wider market in general. Gallup has done a lot of these worker surveys where they found that people, when they quit, oftentimes they're quitting because of their boss. So looking at management, trying to help officers feel part of, they're part of the decision-making process. Having supervisors who express interest in them, and kind of going along this way of good management is something that cities can do that potentially could have a big impact on police officers' job satisfaction without adding any particular additional cost to the cities. So that was one of the really interesting things that kind of emerged from the survey. Some other things we're looking at is there's been a number of industries here in Utah lately that we've been looking at that have kind of partnered together to try and develop a worker pipeline. And so two big examples of this is the composite industry. So you have Boeing, you have Orbital ATK, and maybe 6 or 7 other companies, Northrop Grumman. And these companies got together and they put together a program where they offer high school students an internship. And then they also worked with high schools to kind of develop this program, this curriculum, where if the students go through this program, they complete the internship, they're not exactly guaranteed a job, but they're guaranteed an interview at each one of these 7 companies. And so far, it's worked really well for them in terms of developing this pipeline of entrants who come into the industry early. They get them in high school, and they can just hire them right into the company because they have this training, and they have the initial training and background they need to get started in these positions. So I mean, that was the first program, was really this composite industry. But because it was working so well, a number of other industries have also kind of gone this same route of trying to work with high schools to develop this early curriculum, get students involved, high school students in an internship, and then kind of direct them right into the companies that need these workers. And so the diesel engine industry here in Utah is another one that's been working really well with this kind of model. And so this isn't a model we can exactly just duplicate over for police officers. They have to be 21, right? But finding some way to engage students early, finding a way to kind of help them get the background they need, and then be there when they're ready, when they hit that age 21, where you can help them come into the business. And I've been talking with some police departments about this, and some of them have already developed something similar to that. For example, one department actually has officers teach in the local community college. And these officers, they get these students studying law enforcement, and they see the best of them, and they recommend to their department a number of these students. They say, hey, we should jump on these students. We should hire them now. And so the department hires them while they're still in school, and then refunds their tuition half of their tuition upon graduation, and the other half after their 1-year probation is over. So developing these pipelines, finding a way to recruit potential employees early is another way that police departments can kind of help this recruitment and retention problem without necessarily going for the additional funding. But anyway, so we have these are some of the findings we found. We have some more we're working on, and we'll be releasing this report next month. So stay tuned on this, and I hope to we hope that our report is helpful for your police agencies.